I'm Sarah Tyke, host of the Interested Reader podcast. Each week I'll bring you a short lesson in physics or astronomy, followed by a brief overview of what's happening out there in the universe. We'll also merge the wonders of science with the depths of spirit and discuss the metaphysical and spiritual aspects of our universe and ourselves. Come with me as we explore stars and souls, the intersection of science and spirit. Hi everyone. Welcome to episode 13 of the Interested Reader podcast. And surprisingly, this is going to be released here in a couple days on Friday. It's Wednesday today. And I just released an episode last Friday, so I'm actually on track to be doing one episode a week for 2 weeks in a row. So for me, that's a pretty good record. So I just wanted to record this now, actually. I went through and kind of made up my notes for the time, and I was like, I really want to start recording this now, so I'm pretty excited to be doing this. This episode, I'm going to talk a little bit about the tools of the trade. I really kind of can't stand that term, but that's all I could think of for what we're going to talk about, because we're going to kind of talk about 4 of the main things that I will be probably discussing over the next few episodes in more detail. I'm trying something a little bit new, where I'm basically doing like a PowerPoint presentation. I don't do a lot of editing with these. Most of the time I just put the intro and the outro on and then put it together as a video, and that's the podcast. But what I've done for the past few episodes, or what I would try to do, is at least put a little bit of visuals in. So I would go and make a couple slides and just in the editing software just go and add some slides. There's a little bit of visual interest in there. So I figured rather than doing all of the notes, the outlines, and all the research separate, and then after recording, going and making a whole bunch of slides and everything and putting it all together, I just figured I'd do it all at once and do my research as a presentation. So I'm going to try it and see how it goes. I don't know. I don't really like doing PowerPoint slides either, but I think this will work. I think it'll be at least a way to have something else on the screen rather than just a blank screen or my website. So again, this is where I would really appreciate feedback from you guys. Let me know if this is too middle schoolish to have a PowerPoint slide that I'm clicking through. I don't know. I can come up with something else if this is really unbearable to watch. Okay, so here we go, episode 13, and we're going to be talking about these 4 kind of the main topics that I am interested in, which is numerology, astrology, human design, and tarot. And human design and astrology are very similar. Human design is kind of like a much more in-depth version of astrology. And I just learned about this recently, like in the past year or so. I think it was developed in 1992. So it's a fairly new system. I really like it, but there's a lot to it. So we'll get into that. And again, today's going to be kind of an overview of each of these, and then I'll go into more detail in future episodes. So today's number, this is actually going to be on the 25th. That's when I'm going to release this. So the 25th number will be 7. And again, the way I'm getting this is when we're going to talk about this method of numerology. It's called the Pythagorean theorem. So you're just going to add up the dates, all the numbers in the date 10, 25, 2024. And you'll get a 16. And then you take 1 plus 6 and you get 7. And again, this is one of those things I'm not sure how to do this, because I'm not recording it on the 25th. It's actually the 23rd today. So do I give you guys the number of the date that I'm recording or of the day that it's released? So to me, it makes more sense to do the date that it's released, but that seems a little weird to me. But we're just going to do it this way for now. And if I change, I change. Also, if you'll notice the fonts on the screen, I can't stand this one, honestly. I thought I was going to like it, but there's these little things on the ones that make it almost look like an R. So I might have to go back and change that, but for next time. So today's number, or the 25th number, being number 7. Number 7 symbolizes balance, intellect, and spirituality. So it's not just kind of getting cursory answers to things. It's really about investigating and trying to get to the bottom of things and getting the in-depth answers. And the spirituality aspect is a lot of introspection, not religious topics so much as spiritual topics. And if you have this as your life path, or if it's dominant in your numerology chart, you are also known as the seeker, and 7 is my life path number. So again, you're kind of someone who's always looking for deeper answers. You may appear to be more of a loner, but that's just because you're kind of always inside yourself, just thinking and trying to find answers and contemplating everything. So that's today's number, and we'll get more into numerology, and how to do that. But first, I want to talk about, or give a quote of the day. This is something I would like to kind of do each time, is have a quote of the day, and today's quote is from Mark Twain. "There was never yet an uninteresting life. Such a thing is an impossibility. Inside of the dullest exterior, there is a drama, a tragedy, and a comedy." And I found that, I'm not sure when, but I kind of resonated with it because I've always considered myself to be kind of, I don't want to say dull, but, just kind of ordinary, just kind of mundane, normal. And then this quote just kind of, just kind of lets you know that no, it's maybe on the outside, but that doesn't really matter. On the inside, there's a whole, essentially kind of the theme of my podcast now and my, website and everything. There's a whole universe inside each of us, and it's everything. We all go through joy and sorrow and anger. We have all of the emotions and all of the things that go on inside of us. We don't necessarily show it, so not everyone's going to know the full extent of what's going on, but inside every person, there's all of these things going on, no matter how, plain or boring or dull somebody may seem. There's still a human soul in there that is experiencing the same world, the same universe that everybody else is. And everybody's gonna have a different way of experiencing it. So for as many people, there's 8.5 billion of us on this planet. There's 8.5 billion versions of life going on, and I think that's a pretty amazing thing to consider and to ponder. So that is my quote of the day for you guys. At some point, I'd also like to have kind of like journal prompts or just questions to ask, to think about. Hopefully you guys will go on either Instagram or the Facebook page and talk about things. That is my hope for this group, is that we get together and actually talk about these things, in social media. So next is our space news. So I want to give some sort of, astronomy or physics lesson, or, bring up a topic to kind of keep this all science and spirit. And when I was looking through, I usually go to space.com. They're really good for this. One of the articles that really caught my attention was an artist who uses actual data from telescopes to create his renditions of exoplanets. And if you didn't know, most images that you see from Hubble or any other color image from a telescope is going to be what's called a false color image. So it's not necessarily fake, but it's not necessarily what the telescope is looking at. Most telescopes don't take pictures in the optical spectrum. Not a whole lot goes on in the optical spectrum. There are some. Hubble's wide field planetary camera does it. I don't know what is on the James Webb. Most of the modern telescopes have some sort of optical camera, but a lot of them are taking pictures in X-ray or infrared. And when they do an optical, a lot of times they're taking, like your normal red, green, blue, like your RGB filters, and they're combining them. And then it's usually up to an engineer somewhere to combine them and then adjust them so that they look, I think aesthetically pleasing is part of it, but there is an actual accuracy element where they are looking at the spectra of what they're seeing. So you'll see hydrogen in an image, but that image is going to be in black and white. From the lab, we know that hydrogen, when it's ionized, I believe it's green. So wherever you see a hydrogen signature in a black and white photo, you'll color it green. And then you do that with oxygen, nitrogen, all the other elements. In the lab, scientists have figured out what color they look like when they are ionized. So then when we see those elements through a spectral analysis from a star, we can then apply those colors to the black and white photos that these telescopes are taking. So then they combine them all, and so they're called false color for that reason. But there is, science behind it. It's not just because somebody thought that it looked cool. There actually is a reason. So I thought this was cool. Here's an artist who actually was interested in astronomy. So he goes and takes the data from telescopes and makes these really cool pictures of these alien worlds. So in this article, his name is Martin Vargic, and this here on the screen, if you're watching, is kind of a compilation of all these worlds that he has created. And he's got a website called halcyonmaps.com. And he does a lot of other things. I think he had like a map of the internet, which is kind of cool. So he just takes all this data and then creates what would these worlds look like based on what we're seeing from the telescopes, from the data. And a couple of them that we look at here. So these are alien worlds, also called exoplanets. So exoplanets, anything that's outside of our solar system. And I want to say the latest count was, the number I remember is 6,000, but I would think there has to be more than that. So the one we're looking at here is like this really nice deep blue marble. Its name is HD 189733b. So remember that, kids. It was discovered in 2005, and the scientists say that it smells like rotten eggs and it rains glass. And it's like, wow, that's pretty cool. How do they know that? So the rotten egg smell is due to the presence of hydrogen sulfide in its atmosphere. And the planet was discovered in 2005, but it wasn't until the James Webb Space Telescope analyzed this planet that they were able to detect this hydrogen sulfide. I'm not sure if it was detected in 2024. That's when the article was written. And James Webb Telescope just got up there. It's only been in orbit, I think, for a few years. But it would have been relatively recently that they discovered this hydrogen sulfide. So that's why scientists say that it probably smells like rotten eggs. And they think that this cobalt blue color comes from molten glass in its atmosphere. Another one discovered in 2013 is WASP 76b. And this planet is about the size or the mass of Jupiter, but it's about twice as wide. So you can kind of think about twice as big as size, but the same mass of Jupiter. And it's tidally locked to its parent star. So one side of the star will always face the planet. And on that side that always faces the star, the temperatures get up to 4,350 degrees Fahrenheit, which is enough to vaporize metal. And in the atmosphere, scientists have found a very strong signature of iron vapor. So they're thinking that if that vapor is in the atmosphere when it's warm, if you go to the other side of the planet where it is cold, and that vapor condenses as rain, we would have molten iron rain on this planet. And the last one I found pretty interesting here was discovered in 2006. Its name is TRES 2b. It is the darkest known exoplanet. It reflects less than 1% of its light, and coal reflects about 5%. So this planet is darker than coal. There's a parameter called albedo. If you're ever in the astronomy world and you hear somebody talking about albedo, that's what this is. It's the reflectivity of an object. So Earth reflects about 29% of its light. Jupiter reflects about 34%. And this exoplanet reflects less than 1%. And the scientists aren't actually sure all of the chemicals that might be causing this, but in the atmosphere they can detect gaseous forms of sodium, potassium, and titanium oxide. And all of those are light-absorbing chemicals. But some scientists say that that's not enough to make the planet as dark as we see. So they're thinking there could be something else unknown that we don't even know how to detect for. So that's just kind of our little astronomy lesson for the day. Exoplanets, art meets science. I thought it was pretty cool. You can go ahead and check out that one guy's website at Halcyon Maps. But I thought it was pretty cool. You don't just have to do, if you're interested in science, if you're interested in astronomy, you don't have to just stick there to the textbook, to the lab writing down numbers. You can actually take the data that is being received and make really cool art out of it. And also, you could translate that if you're into sci-fi writing. You have a very strong basis now for creating these alien worlds, where your civilization has adapted to molten iron rain. That's a real thing that's going on. So that's pretty cool. So that's our science for the day. If you guys have any questions, again, obviously let me know. So next we're going to be talking about numerology. So this is kind of the first of the 4 kind of topics that are tools that I'll be using. As far as this side, there aren't many. I mean, I was going to go over this space or the skyandtelescope.com website, but we'll do that next time or a few episodes down the road. You can check it out. It's mainly just, I like it for, if they still have it. They had a tool where it was an interactive star map. So you could put in your date, time, location, and it would show you what your night sky looked like, so you could go outside and actually find the stars and the constellations, which is pretty cool. That's Sky and Telescope magazine. So, for numerology, again, this is going to be kind of an overview, and then I think in the next episode, I'll go into more detail, maybe have some examples. So numerology studies how numbers affect our lives. The idea is that all numbers have a frequency, just like colors, words, objects. Everything kind of has a frequency that affects how you feel or how you think. And this has been done in marketing, for ages. Blue has a certain effect on people. Red has a certain effect on people. McDonald's knows this with the yellow arches and the red background. Target is, a red and white bullseye. These things do something to the consumer. It's said that in fast food restaurants, they'll use very bright, vivid colors because it makes people eat faster, so they get in and they get out. Whereas at a nicer sit-down restaurant, they're going to use muted tones that calm people down, so they sit and they stay longer. So depending on what you want your consumer to do, people do use color to try to make that happen. And all color is a frequency. And I think, we've all you're kind of drawn to certain colors. Like there's just a certain shade of something that you love and a certain shade that you don't. Same thing with objects. It's all frequency. So numbers have a frequency. And numerology is a study of how that frequency affects us. It's a lot like a zodiac sign. So there's a whole chart when you're born that has a bunch of different numbers, and what those numbers are at that time of birth is kind of imprinted on you and kind of shapes your personality. That's the theory, just like your astrology, your zodiac sign. And zodiac signs are also called sun signs, which we will talk about in just a second. So there's 2 types of numerology. One is the Pythagorean. That's what I've been using. If you're watching, you see the screen where I've broken down the date. You add up all the numbers. It's called reducing. So you reduce the date to one number. Pythagorean numerology also acknowledges master numbers, which are 11, 22, and 33. And those have a special meaning. Those 3 specifically, and I'll get into this later, but it has to do with how they break down. So 11 breaks down to a 2, or reduces to a 2. And that combination means something special. But those 3 are considered master numbers. The other numbers that repeat, the 44, 55, 66, 77, 88, 99, those are called power numbers, just because they are the same number repeated. So that has a special meaning. If it happens to be 11, 22, 33, those are the master numbers. Those are even more powerful than your power numbers. And again, I'll talk about all that in more detail later on. This is just kind of give an overview. So you have a numerology chart when you're born, and it's based on your birth name and the date that you were born. That's Pythagorean numerology. The other one is called Chaldean numerology. And in this system, you assign a number to each letter of the alphabet, and then you use those numbers to basically do your chart, but they don't reduce down to one digit like Pythagorean. They will use double digit or compound numbers. I don't know if I put this chart in there, but when I did this for me, there's a lot of free sites that you can go and do this. One of mine broke down to like a 12, they called it a 12-6 or something. So they're using double digit and these compound numbers to get their meaning from. They do not recognize master numbers. So there are no special meanings to the 11, the 22, the 33. And the focus of Chaldean numerology is more on your most used name. So if you go by, Jenny instead of Jennifer, or Allie instead of Allison, it focuses on that name rather than what is on your birth certificate. So your numerology chart, based on your birth name and date, there are basically 5 key numbers that will be on the chart. You got your life path, which is the most important number. That, as it says, is your life path. That's what you're here to do. That is what you are going to be driven to do for your whole life. And then you've got your birthday number. That is your special skills. There's a number called the expression, which is your weaknesses and your strengths. Your personality number is what you show to the world. That's the kind of the face that you present that everybody sees. And then there's a soul urge, and that is the deepest desires that make you feel fulfilled. And again, I'll go into all of these in a different episode, and I'll just use mine as an example. So those are the 5 on your chart that you'll get. So next, we're going to kind of go into astrology here. It's very similar to numerology, except you've got planets and constellations affecting and imprinting on your life rather than just the birth date. So in astrology, you've got planetary alignments, and all planets have electromagnetic fields. And the idea is that these fields interact, even at the distances that they're at. Electromagnetism can travel these distances, which is why we'll get into this later. The electric universe theory, I think, is much more sound than the traditional cosmology of using gravity as your main force. The gravitational force is very weak and it dies off very quickly, but the electromagnetic field can retain its strength throughout a very long distance. So if planets have these magnetic fields, they're all interacting, and we are all living in this field of electromagnetic radiation from the Earth has a magnetic field, the sun, the other planets, it's all kind of woven together, and we are all living in this field. The idea is that at your birth date, where the position of all the stars and the planets in the sky produces a unique field that then imprints on you, and that determines your personality and all these various aspects. So the zodiac sign is also known as the sun sign, and that is where the sun was when you were born. So there's 12 of them. I think, as we all know, kind of the standard breakdown here. I don't know if you guys remember, but it's probably more than a few years ago. It's probably, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago. There was this whole big thing about there being a 13th constellation, a 13th zodiac sign, and there's just kind of this weird, not panic, but people were like, oh my gosh, did my zodiac sign change? Am I really a this or a that? Because now they've added this other constellation. And to me, it was just kind of funny because it's like there was no new constellation. There's always been a 13th constellation there. We just chose 12 because it breaks down pretty nicely to have, so I'll get to this in a second, each of those 12 constellations takes up 30 degrees on the sky, and it just works out that adds up to 360. 13 kind of throws it off. But that 13th constellation has always been there. It's called Ophiuchus. And it didn't, people were talking about like it had never been there, like it was this new constellation that was coming in. It's like, no, it's always been there. We just chose to ignore it this whole time. So everything stayed the same. But it was just kind of weird that for some reason, I don't even know what started it. The people just kind of got this thing like, oh my gosh, there's another constellation there and it's going to change everything. But it did not. And the 12, I think, I'll look into more about the history of this again in another episode. But these 12 just kind of work out. again, we're going to divide the sky relatively evenly. So the zodiac is a region of the sky that's tilted 8 degrees from the ecliptic, and the ecliptic is the apparent path of the sun as it travels around the Earth. So if you imagine like the Earth being the center and the sun moving around it, that path that the sun makes is called the ecliptic. So you take this celestial sphere, you divide it into 12 sections of 30 degrees, and then you get these 12 regions. Each one has a constellation, and the sun takes roughly a month to go through each of these sections, so it kind of works out pretty well. You throw that 13th one in there, that would kind of mess things up a little bit. So this is a picture of our ecliptic. The red line is the ecliptic. That's kind of the path the sun makes. The white line, I believe that is... It's kind of a confusing picture here. The zodiac are the green constellations, if you're watching. So it's just... But the tilt doesn't necessarily matter. This is just kind of how it looks on the sky. Because the Earth is tilted, you know, everything is going to look tilted. But this picture is this is about the best one I could find, and it was, I think, rather confusing. But you can just imagine these 12 constellations spread out along a sphere, and then as the sun moves throughout the year, you know, as it appears to move. Obviously, we know the sun does not move, but as the sun appears to move across the sky throughout the year, it moves through each of these, if you're looking on the screen, each of these green constellations. And so that's why it's called a sun sign, because the sun was in Taurus or it was in Virgo when you were born. And then here's just the constellations of the 12 of them. Probably, I'm trying to think. So Taurus, to me, that is my constellation. Taurus has Aldebaran in it. It's a really bright red star called the bullseye. Gemini, if you're familiar with star names, Castor and Pollux are the two popular stars in Gemini. I don't know many of the others. Sagittarius is interesting because if you're looking at Sagittarius, you're looking toward the center of the galaxy. That's what I always like that about that one. And again, these I know are visible. I think these should be visible in northern and southern hemisphere because it's close enough to the ecliptic that you see them in both hemispheres. I'm not entirely sure about that. I would think it would have to be. Okay, so that's the basics of astrology. Again, I'm going to kind of go through more detail in future episodes. I just want to give an overview of what we're going to be talking about. So human design is, again, it's kind of based on astrology because it's based on kind of the configuration of the planets, the stars, everything, you know, all the celestial bodies at that particular time and place of your birth that made this unique energy imprint on your life. So this image is from jovianarchive.com. This is the site of the guy who started this human designer who, you know, invented it. So there's, on the side here, there's a list of things that make up this chart. 26 activations, 13 planetary imprints, 9 centers, 36 channels. It's very complicated. And the thing I found most frustrating so far is that I can't find a decent website that explains all of this stuff for free. You have to, you know, buy the specific readings and everything for it, and it's, from what I've seen, it's not cheap. So I haven't actually done the full cost of this yet. I've just done the free versions. There's an app that I have that looks similar to this. There's a few things that the chart I'm going to show you has that the app doesn't. So I'm still not sure on this one chart that I have. There's a bunch of symbols. I have no idea what they mean because I haven't paid to find out. But this is the basic look of a human design chart. If you're watching, there's these centers that they're called either open or closed. There's all sorts of lines that are called gates or channels, and they all mean something different. And the complicated thing is that they'll interact with each other. So if you have this one gate connecting to another one, but it's only partially open, it could be fully open, it could be fully closed, and there's just so many combinations. I don't know how this guy came up with it. So there's 4 basic energy types, just like we have 12 basic zodiacs. There's 4 types of energy, or energy types, in this human design. There's a manifestor, a generator, which includes a manifesting generator, which is kind of a mix, a hybrid. There's a projector and a reflector. Most people, like 70% of the population, is said to be a generator, which includes this hybrid manifesting generator. And then 20%, I think, are the projector, which is the least common. So if you're watching, this is the chart that I did. So you give your name, your place of birth, your date of birth. The name isn't necessary that I know of. That's just so they can, sign you up. So then you get this chart that there's 4 arrows, 2 on each side of the outline of the human. Those mean something. Each of those centers means something. Whether there's a kind of like a peachish filled in square and a filled in triangle. Those are both considered to be closed centers. The other ones for me are all open. You'll see little purple circles. That means that those gates are either open. I think those are closed. If they're not colored in, they're open, and they've got all these lines and these channels. So there's so much going on here. And then on the side, you've got all these different symbols, which I recognize most as being the astrological symbols, but I don't know what the numbers mean. And they've got a column for design and a column for personality. And I've never found out what any of that means, again, because I haven't paid for it. So this comes from a site called myhumandesign.com. And again, this is free. You can just go in and you can get this. And they give you, some detail about what it is, like what your energy type is. And they'll give you some of the basics. But I didn't see anything about what those 2 columns on the side mean with all the astrological symbols and numbers. And again, I don't remember the details of my chart, but I do remember thinking that it was very accurate. One of the centers, I believe it's if you look at the human head part, it's the triangle is pointing downwards. It's called the Ajna Center, AJNA. And I just heard somebody talking on a podcast about this, and I think she'd said that if that center is open, it means that you are basically open to every possibility and every combination of everything. So what happens is you tend to almost become paralyzed with the amount of information that you're taking in. And I don't even know if I knew my type at that, or my chart at that point, but I was like, that has to be me. Because I will sit there and I will overthink and I will consider all of the different possibilities, all the permutations that could possibly happen if I make this particular decision. And then it's like, okay, well, if I don't do that decision, what about decision B? And then I have to go through all the combinations and all the possibilities, all the ramifications of making that decision. So then nothing gets done. Because I have to consider all of them. It's like, what if? What if this happens? What if that happens? They're all possibilities. I have to account for them. Whereas somebody else, I think someone else on the podcast that this lady was talking to, their center was closed. So they don't really consider the possibilities. They just do. They're like, I want to do this, so I'm going to go do that. And they don't really think about any other possibility, any other outcome or anything. Obviously, there's good and bad to both of those. But to me, that explained a lot to me, because I was like, why am I like this? Because it gets to be really frustrating when I can't make a decision, because I have to sit here and I have to go through all of the possibilities. Now, obviously, if it's something important and it's like do or die right now, let's do it, then I can do it. But given the opportunity to sit and think about something, nothing will ever get done, because I'm going to have to sit and question everything. By the time I've come up to think, okay, I think I've made a decision, now circumstances have changed and now I have to start the cycle all the way over. So I thought that was pretty cool. That explained a lot. That helped me kind of understand a little bit more about myself, that it's not just, I don't know, me being incapable or incompetent. Like that's actually, at least according to human design, that is how I'm wired, to just go through all the possibilities. That I am open to every thing that could happen, and I have to consider all of it. That's just me. That's just what I'm going to do. So that's pretty cool. I like that one a lot. And just as, like I said, on this app that you have, they have a free version, a paid version. And they go through a lot of the information. There's a lot of stuff in this app. And I don't remember what it's called. You can go, in any of the app stores and just search for human design, and there are several that come up. And it's pretty cool. I would highly recommend just giving it a try, just for the free ones. I mean, you don't have to pay anything. It's just cool just to give it a try. So there's a lot there with human design. So next is going to be tarot. This is something I think that ends up being kind of controversial if you're talking about a spiritual or a religious aspect as well, because some people consider tarot to be, I don't know if I want to go so far as to say evil, but it kind of has that connotation. So it uses a set of 78 illustrated cards. I think most would probably know what a tarot deck is. So there's a major and a minor arcana. The major arcana are 22 cards, and those are things like the Hermit, the Fool, the Chariot. Death is one of those. Death always comes up in any sort of movie, any horror movie. The Death Tarot card always comes up, and it's always bad, and someone literally dies. It drives me crazy because that's not what it means. And then the minor arcana is almost like a deck of cards where you got cups, pentacles, swords, and wands. And then you've got like an 2 through king. So it's almost like an actual playing deck. So some people say that tarot can predict the future. Some people use it to just discover hidden meanings. Some people use it to answer personal questions. And that's where I fall into. I use it as just a tool for kind of probing the subconscious and answering, just some question, kind of giving yourself guidance. I know the Bible forbids the use of sorcery, and so people consider tarot to be sorcery. I do not. I use it just for, again, kind of almost like a meditation. It's almost like just asking yourself questions to try to dig deeper and find, maybe it's some subconscious answer, something that you're not really expecting, just to kind of help explore, figure out what's going on, to kind of help with personal development. And there's different spreads that you can use. You can either do 2 cards, you can use 3 cards, usually a past, present, future, or you can use the Celtic cross, and that's the one that I usually use, where there's 10 cards. And each placement of those cards means something different. If you're looking at the screen, there's an example of the Celtic cross from tarot.com. So the idea behind any tarot card or tarot reading is you have some sort of question in mind, usually not yes or no. We have an 8-ball for that. So you're asking a question: should I take this job, or what would it mean if I took this job? Can I succeed if I, become a writer? Those are all yes or no questions. Those are bad examples. Don't do those. But it's just, I've used yes or no questions. I don't know. I think it's all up to the person. But the idea is that you have a question in your mind, and then you pick cards from this deck of 78 cards. And the idea is that your subconscious is essentially telling you which cards to pick. So the cards you pick have a specific meaning subconsciously. You're choosing them for a subconscious reason. And then you read them, and each card has a positive or negative meaning to it. And then, so if you're going to do the 3-card one, that's the one I'm really only familiar with the 3 cards in the Celtic cross. So the 3 cards are past, present, future. So you've got this question in your mind. You draw 3 cards. The first one is like the past situation that is influencing you now. The second one you draw is your current situation, where you find yourself. And then the third one would be the future. And again, I guess, and that's why people think that it predicts the future. Because also in the Celtic cross, position 10 is kind of like the future outcome. And it's never, you know, set in stone. This is exactly what's going to happen. It's just sort of, based on your current situation and your current trajectory. This is what will likely happen if you don't change. And I think we all ponder these things anyways, and I think that's not that big of a leap. I don't consider that to be sorcery. Maybe I'm wrong. So that's the idea, is that it's a subconscious thing, and so that's how I use it. And I like the Celtic cross just because it's more complicated, and I have to make things more complicated. But there are a lot more nuances when you have 10 cards. But it's the same sort of thing where you're drawing these 10 cards, and each of them gets placed in a certain way. And it's just your subconscious is coming through and essentially choosing the cards for you, and then you're sometimes surprised by the answer, because you're like, oh, why would that card come up? And so then you kind of have to ask yourself, why wouldn't that card come up, and look at the meaning. And I like it just as a tool of, kind of, like I said, self-discovery, almost like meditation, because it kind of gives you something to think about and to ponder, and you kind of start asking yourself why. And I love all that stuff. And to me, that would not be forbidden, I don't think, by the Bible, to just be asking yourself, why is it like this? Why am I like this? What is going on? What am I doing? I think we all do that anyways, even if we weren't quote unquote supposed to. So I don't think tarot is anything weird. The deck that I have is based on Greek mythology. There's, I think, if you can go to like Barnes and Noble, I think has tons of different tarot decks. I've got like one that's based on like fairies. Can't think of the other ones I've seen there. I don't know. But so the one I have is based on Greek mythology. Most of the time, if a card, like what you'll see in TV and movies, is that when the card is upside down, it has a negative meaning. The one that I have, the dual meaning is basically embedded in the picture. So it's almost like it's painted or drawn in such a way that there's kind of a light aspect on the card where there's light shining and, the characters in the light. But there's also like a part of the card that's dark, where maybe there's, the dark forest, there's a tunnel, there's an underground, there's a cave. So each card kind of has the light and dark portrayed on it, so you don't have to worry about upside down or right side up. It just depends on the deck. And I think, however you do the reading, if you like to do an upside down, you like to consider that, that's good too. My deck won't do it because you would just shuffle them one direction, and you probably would not be picking them upside down. But so that's how you would read them. And again, I don't see anything wrong with tarot. I know growing up, my mom did not like that I wanted to get into all of this, because she did consider it, again, I'm not sure she considered it evil, but just sort of not Christian. One thing I will say though is the Ouija board is something that I absolutely will not use. I didn't even want to make a slide about it because I didn't want to look at it. I didn't want to write it down. When I was a kid, I didn't see anything wrong with it because I thought it was just a game. I was like, of course somebody, if it's moving, of course somebody is moving it. It seemed to me more of a game of figuring out who's doing it. So I was like, what's the big deal? It's more of a detective game. As I got older, and again, I mentioned this to my mom, and she was just, you just shut it down. There's not even a chance. Don't even think about it in her presence. And I couldn't really figure out why. And then as I got older, and I realized what is supposed to actually be happening with a Ouija board is that you are inviting an entity to use your body to move that planchette around. And I didn't realize that when I was a kid growing up. And when I found out, I was like, that's what they're doing? Like, why would you do that? Not a chance would I do that. You don't invite something in to use your body. Like, that is, that's heavy. That's deep. That is something you do not do. That, to me, that is sorcery. That is where you would draw the line. It's just dangerous. I don't know. and I know there are people who use it, and I've heard the theory that they, have a prayer of protection. They know how to essentially open the gate to the other side and close it, and they're fine with it. And they say if you go into it fearing that something bad is going to happen, then that fear will draw out the negative entities. And yeah, kind of like what you bring in is what's going to come out. So this person would do it with no fear at all because she was very confident in what she was doing. So she never had a bad experience, and that's fine. If you're of that mindset, that's great. I will never in a million years even consider. I don't even like saying the word. I don't even like saying Ouija board. I'm that superstitious about it. The board that must not be named. But no, so that is something I will not ever. I don't ever mess with that. I don't want one in my house. I don't want to talk about it. I don't even want to put a slide on this presentation about it. So that I don't like. Tarot, again, to me is just you're not inviting anybody. You're not asking any other entity to get involved. It's just you and your subconscious. Why am I drawing these cards? What do they mean? How can I apply them, to my life and to solving my problems? So those are my 4 main tools that I'll be talking about: numerology, astrology, human design, and tarot. I guess that's where we'll start. And then, like I said, each of the upcoming episodes will probably be more in-depth on each of those. So here's just a couple pictures of the tarot decks. I think the one in the center here is probably what everybody's kind of familiar with. But they've got all sorts of different themes that you can get. So I really like them. And the artwork is usually just beautiful on these things. And there's a whole thing about, I don't know, making it kind of a ritualistic thing and clearing your cards. And we can always talk about that with crystals, because we should get into crystals as well. I should have put that on here because I love crystals. Because again, that's another. Crystals they're crystalline structure, they're a color, and so there's a vibration and energy to each crystal that interacts with your own energy field, and that's why crystal healing why it works. So we'll get into that too. I should have put that on here. Dang it. I'll make a note for that for next time. So, since this is coming up, I just want to say happy Halloween. This is one of my favorite holidays, and you want to talk about, evil. I don't think that, Halloween can certainly be evil. I think it comes from a satanic sacrifice. But I don't think that we do that now. I hope not. Most people don't. Most people are in it for candy and for dressing up. And it's just kind of fun because, again, to me, the spiritual world exists. Whether or not, I guess, there's ghosts floating around, I don't know. I've never seen one. But I do know people have had interactions that can't be explained. So it's there. So to me, it's just, Halloween just feels like I think we all know, it's a time when the veil between living and dead is thinned enough that they can kind of blend a little bit more. And I think to me, it's kind of exciting. And again, maybe I shouldn't like it as much as I do, but I can't help it. I'm kind of drawn to it just because it is unknown and it is something that's supernatural. Because I would love to know what is going on the other side. For those of you that don't know, so my dad died a long time ago, 2002. So he's been dead 22 years. And my mom just died 2 months ago on August 2nd of this year. So the thought of kind of like this thin veil where maybe I could, not that I'm going to try to communicate with them, but just like, you just think like, what is going on? Like, what happened to them? My mom loved Halloween and she loved Christmas. And those are my 2 favorite as well. So it's just kind of, I just love thinking about that spiritual aspect. What happened? Because it's kind of, it's kind of morbid. But we're all going to go through it at some point. So Halloween's just kind of like, it just has that air of mystery and intrigue and just a little bit, just a little bit closer to that spiritual side that I love learning about. So, and again, I don't like I don't know that anybody really is into Halloween for the original purpose of it, which again I think was sacrifice. But like I said, now it's just about having fun. It's about dressing up and getting candy and carving pumpkins. I still have a pumpkin, uncarved pumpkin, sitting in my living room, and we're coming up on. I got like a week until Halloween, so we'll see what happens. It might just end up, cut up for pumpkin seeds, and then I don't know. So that's all I got for you guys for now. I think after this, the next episode will probably be. Hopefully, I can do them every week, but this may have just been a rare oddity that I was able to get everything together in a week, and was actually had some time set aside to do this at this time when I finished the presentation. So that's it. And next time, we'll focus more on numerology. We'll get into the history of it. We'll get into more of the meanings of each of the numbers, 1 through 9. And probably just give some examples. I'll just use some personal examples just so we can see how this goes. But we'll start doing more in-depth episodes about each of those 4 tools. All right, guys, that's all I have. Again, if you have any questions, please let me know. If you are of the mind to like or follow, subscribe, I would really appreciate that as well. I'm on Instagram, YouTube. There's a Facebook page for the interested reader. You can find the podcast on Spotify, Apple, Amazon. I hope those all work. I'm listed. I think it's updating with new episodes, I'm pretty sure. But if not, if you go to the website, there is a contact form. Or you can just email me at sarah@theinterestedreader.com. Ask me questions, tell me what's going on. All right, guys, I think that is going to be it. Until next time, I hope you guys enjoyed this. And thanks for listening, and I love you guys, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye. I hope you enjoyed this episode and are inspired to question and investigate the world around you. Let me know what you're thinking about. You can contact me through the website, theinterestedreader.com, send me an email at sarah@theinterestedreader.com, or join the Interested Reader group on Facebook. I'll see you at some later time T, where T is greater than T naught, and T naught is equal to now. Thanks for being an interested reader, and I'll see you next time.